in a place that I actually like it. But we're gonna give it a shot. All right. So when we are looking to add fractions, what do we need to do? Or what do we need to have in order to be able to add fractions like this? In order to add a fraction, what do they need to have? Same denominator, common denominator. So on this top one, 1/5 and 1/3, what is a common denominator that they can have? 15. So I'm going to take this guy times 3/3 in order to get 3 times 1 is 15, or no, 3 times 1 is 3, because I'm good at mathing. 3/15. And the right one, we multiply by 5/5 to get up to 15. So we're going to have 5/15. When we add those together, what do we get? Check that again. What's 5 plus 3?
Oh.
8/15. Once the denominator is the same, you just add your numerators. But the denominator has to be the same first. So on the middle one, what's the common denominator we have here? 4. So on this first one, we literally just took the denominator of the other one and multiplied it. That's going to be a very easy way to approach it. Here we're looking for that least common multiple in order to get to a common denominator. And we notice that it's 4, so I can take my 3/4. It's already at that 4th denominator. And this one we're going to multiply by 2/2 because I want to multiply it by what is essentially 1. And that's going to give us 2/4. 5/4. And then the very bottom one. What is going to be our common denominator? 21. Yeah, take the pass. So it's great and Belly. So we're going to get to that common denominator on the left side by multiplying by 3/3 to get to 9/21. And on the right one, we're going to multiply by 7/7. So we're going to get 49/21. Because I know this is not what our first instinct was going to be. We're like, oh, those are going to cancel out. No, they're not. 7/3 is already 2 1/3. 3/7 is almost half. So when we add these together, we're going to get 58/21. And then we can look and see if that simplifies. I think they multiply by 3. So let's look and see if that simplifies at all. What is, let's see, 58 divided by 3 is not a whole number. Never mind, I'm bad at mathing. And then 58 won't divide by 7. So nope, it doesn't simplify. It's good to check though. When you're using the yellow calculators, you can actually just type your whole fraction in and see if it'll simplify. And this one does not. But it's a good idea to check. Questions on what or why we did any of the choices we made? Whatever, y'all know what I mean. Felt weird to say it, but questions on anything we did right now? Okay. Because surprise of all surprises, what we are going to do is we're going to look at our rational functions and we're going to add and subtract those. There's yet another notes page if you hadn't noticed it. Oh, that doesn't change. So go pick up the notes page if you don't have it. And all this says is this is fancy schmancy talk for get a common denominator. And then you can add the numerators, or you could subtract the numerators. The way that they're pointing out for you to get your common denominator is exactly what we did on this first one, where we multiplied by the denominator of the other piece. It's not our only option. We can also find a least common denominator. That's just significantly harder to put into a formula. So when they have this, this should be our lowest common multiple, our least common denominator. Least common denominator. When it's fully simplified, that'll be our least common denominator. You do not have to start out with the least common denominator, but we do eventually have to simplify to get there. And there will be times when it saves us work, and I will show you what it looks like to see that. Sure. Okay, so we're going to look here. Here's example 1. And this is a really great example of there's an easy way and a way that requires more simplifying. Because we want to add these together, which means we need a common denominator. One option is to simply take whatever the denominator is of the other side and use that as your multiplier. Totally valid. The other option is to go, I would really rather not do a whole bunch of simplifying and find your least common denominator. So we could take 10 and do times 10 over 10. And we could take our 4b and take this guy times 4b over 4b. That's not what a b looks like. That is 100% a valid strategy. Your other option is to look critically at them and figure out what is the lowest common denominator between 4b and 10. And it should be, yeah, 20b. Yeah. So you can go either direction, but I just wanted to kind of put that thought in your head. So when we do that multiplication, 10 times 7a is going to give us 70a over 40b. And then we're going to add 4 times 4 is 16bc squared over 40b. That gives us our common denominator, so we can smush this into one fraction now, where we have 40b along with 70a plus 16bc squared. I made an error on my notes. I'm like, why does that not match? And then we want to look and see if there's anything that all of the pieces have that we can simplify. So we kind of noticed this when we looked at our lowest common denominator, where we didn't really want it to be 40, we wanted it to be 20, because everything here is divisible by 2. And we can do that. To simplify this, we can divide all the individual pieces by 2. So your fully simplified fraction here is going to be 35a plus 8bc squared over 20b. There's no other pieces that everything shares. 35 is no longer divisible by any of the common factors of 8 and 20. So you can either do this divide like the lowest common denominator here, or you can simplify here. Either way, you're going to simplify somewhere. You're going to have to find that thought. So we keep checking to see if we can simplify until we're sure we're at that lowest common denominator. Questions on that one? For sure. So now we're asked to add these ones and then simplify it. Gross. We have adding and subtracting stuff in the bottom. So the first thing I want to do is I want to see if we can factor the bottom to get us down to things that are multipliers. Does that bottom piece that has adding and subtracting, this guy, can we factor this at all? Nope. And that's okay. That is valid. So all we're going to do is we're going to put parentheses around it, so that we remember to treat it as one piece. Then we are asked to add these together, so we need to get to a common denominator. So we're going to use that same strategy we just did where we multiply by the denominator of the other side. So since this one has a denominator of just x, I'm going to take this guy and do x over x. Still means 1. We're going to multiply by that. And then this side, we're just going to take this whole denominator, and that's going to be what we use. We're going to use 3x squared plus 20. Why did my 2 go weird? Over 3x squared plus 20. Using the whole denominator that's there is 100% a valid strategy. We're going to wind up with our common denominator of 3x squared plus 20 times x. Our numerators, we are all going to multiply out. So we're going to have our 3x squared times 20, giving us 60x squared. 20 times 20, giving us 400. And 200x times x, giving us plus 200, because I'm good at mathing. X squared. So I kind of put my common denominator combining together with my distributing on each of the pieces. We did this times this times this, and that times that. Because I kind of combined 2 steps here to reduce our writing. Is there one spot how we did that? And then our last step is to simplify our numerator. What do I have that I can combine like terms on here?
You can divide by 2.
I cannot divide by 2. 3x squared does not divide by 2. I'm looking at my numerator. What can I do to combine up there?
60, 200.
Yeah, my 60x squared and my 200x squared. I can add those together and get 260x squared plus 400. And we're over, again, I don't really care if we leave it in factored form. If you multiply it out, pay attention to what the instructions say in the problem. Our lowest common denominator here is 3x squared plus 20 times x. Since I have this 3 here, I can't divide by 2. 400 doesn't divide by 3. So that's as low as we can go. If everything had an x, we could cancel out the x, but they don't. So that is fully simplified. Is gross, but it's fully simplified. So we're getting to that common denominator. And in this case, that was our lowest common denominator. We have one more that we're gonna do. Okay, and it's kind of gross looking, but it's okay. So we're asked to simplify this. I have 1 over a whole trinomial plus x over x plus 1. So whenever I see a trinomial and we are asked to simplify, our first step is going to be come in here and see if we can factor this. So we're going to x and box. Let's see if we can x it. What will go on the top of my x? 1. What will go on the bottom? 2. Is there a pair of numbers that can multiply to be 1 and add to be 2? 1 and 1. So we can rewrite this as 1 over x plus 1 times x plus 1. Then we're trying to add x over x plus 1. So factor it before you decide what your lowest common denominator is. Because what are we going to need to do to get to a lowest common denominator here? Can I cancel out when I don't have an x plus 1 up here? So I can't cancel out. And I see that I have 1 over here. How many x plus 1s do we have over here? 2. So is my lowest common denominator going to have 1 x plus 1 or is it going to have 2 x plus 1s? Marie, can you grab the door? He's knocking with like his fingertip. Like, just knock with gusto, because I saw you poke that window, Anthony. You're like, can't hear you. Okay, so our common denominator has to be at least as big as the biggest one. I'm going to need to have at least 2 in order for it to be the same. It's very much like the, this one. We had to get the 2 up to be the same as the 4 to be able to add them together. It has to be the bigger one. So when we come back to this guy, I need to have another x plus 1 over here. So our lowest common denominator is going to be x plus 1 times x plus 1. So then we're going to try and add these guys together. I'm going to keep this factored form on my bottom, x plus 1 times x plus 1, or you can put x plus 1 squared. And on the top, we're going to have our 1, this one, plus, and we're going to do this distribution here. X times x gives me x squared, and x times 1 gives me 1x. I'm going to reorganize that because that looks all scrambly and crazy. And we're going to see we have x squared plus x plus 1 over x plus 1 times x plus 1. Why is it not writing things? And our last step is going to be to see if we can simplify that any further. Can we factor the top? Let's try. We're going to look at this guy. A times C is 1, and my B is 1. Is there a pair of numbers that multiplies to be 1 and adds to be 1? Let me think. Is there a pair of numbers that multiplies to be 1 and adds to be 1? I'm seeing a couple of head shakes. Good. No. Oop. No, it's not factorable. So what that means is that this is our answer. That is fully factored. That's what it is. So we got to our lowest common denominator here. You could absolutely still multiply by the denominator of the other fraction here. You're just going to wind up with something that does cancel out, because you're going to be distributing stuff, and then you're going to have to refactor. So if you find a lowest common denominator, especially when you've got these polynomials, it's going to save you from having to multiply out, factor out, and then cancel at the end. So it's saving you work. So if it's something like these guys back here, totally valid. Like, just go by the other denominator and simplify at the end. When you've got something like this, I highly recommend finding your lowest common denominator. It's going to save you a bunch of work. Okay? I don't know why I have a blank page there, but I do. Awesome sauce. That's fun. Okay, this is homework 2, which is actually the last homework before spring break. So this is our 9-2, and you can do 1 and 5. You honestly could probably figure out 7 and 11 for sure, because it's the same process. Just subtraction is what we're going to do tomorrow. Same exact process. Common denominator, subtract it instead of adding it. So you probably could do this whole thing, but 1 and 5 are the ones we've actually done together. Tomorrow we'll go through subtraction. I will get the reviews out for the quiz, which is next Wednesday. And yeah, that's going to be really close to it, because we're going to do notes tomorrow. Monday and Tuesday, I believe, are both review, and then Wednesday's the quiz. And then Thursday's the college career fair, which is the day before spring break, because that's the wise choice. Yes, my dear.
How much points is the quiz?
It's going to be half a test. So usually like 25 or 50, depending on, honestly, really depends on how we do.